Okay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Holistic Human Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Jenna Bradshaw, and today we have a very special guest, Andrea Rodgers, and I'm really thrilled to have her on. We're going to take a deep dive into a little bit of a different topic, which I'm really excited about. Nothing too different from like holism in general, but really for the youth. So I'm really excited to touch on this topic. And we met at my class last summer. I had a class on the beach. It was like sound bowls and meditation and movement. It was awesome. Don't worry, they're coming back. Weather is warm on the Northeast. We're starting that up again, so it'll be so
Highly
exciting.
recommend everyone come. Highly recommend everyone come. The most relaxing hour you could possibly imagine.
I am so happy. And then we just remain friends, and I resonate with all of the content and all of the information you put out there. So without further ado, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. I am very blessed to have this amazing holistic community and you in my life. Like, it's been such an amazing journey. So I am the owner of the American Dream Learning Center. For now, it's remote business and in person in the house. And I post a lot of content on Instagram, mostly on Instagram. I got to branch into Facebook a little more, but my username on Instagram is the Adventures of Ms.A. And I'll just give a little history of like how I basically went on this journey of, realizing the importance of not only education, but holistic health. So
yeah, what is your journey? Because I feel like there's always a story. You don't just randomly get into it. Like, there's always a story.
There's always a trigger. There's always a story. There's always a trigger that gets you into it. So when I was younger, I was very, very sick. I had seizures, very, very bad seizures. It started at 4.5. And at that time, it was crazy. They didn't have medicine to like stop a seizure. So I would have a seizure once a month, and it would mean immediate trips to the emergency room. I was in the hospital like once a month. Yeah. And eventually, like a few years later, they came out with medication you can give at home where we can give at home and it could stop a seizure, but that wasn't for like, going back, I'm 33 years old. Like this was in like the early 90s. So in the early 90s, like things started picking up as far as medication, stuff like that. But it was not pretty. And that was from like age 4.5 to age 9. And I would have like horrific side effects. Like I had psychiatric side effects from some of the medications that I was on that young, like to stop the seizure.
Wow.
It was very, very, very insane. And then at age 9, my doctor says, okay, so either your seizures are going to go away completely when you hit puberty, or they're going to get worse. And I'm like, well, that's a great proper bill, They went away. They went away.
Thank God.
They went away. And then, thank God they went away. But a few years later, at age 14, my doctor says to me, oh, I want to try this new drug. It has less side effects than the one that you're on. It blew 4 years of my life. Psychiatric side effects. I had another seizure. It actually gave me seizures. It did the opposite of what it's supposed to do. Forget it. So I was like basically a 20-year battle. And then
just out of curiosity, do you like now in life, do you have any clue what triggered the seizures? Or
I have a lot of suspicions. I have a lot of suspicions. Like I think certain childhood procedures, I think so. That's what I think
so too.
I think definitely part of it, because it happened at at age 4.5,
Yeah.
a few years
strange.
after. Yeah, strange. So I definitely think that was a triggering point for that. And then at age 20, my parents were like, all right, you have to pick up the pieces. You have to just like keep going. You have to go to school. So I went to college, and at first I tried pre-med because I always liked medicine. I like the idea of like giving back, but the pre-med was not for me. So my mom, not for me. The course load, it was crazy. So my mom said that, why don't you go for teaching? Because she was a teacher at the time. So I said, okay. She said, do special education. Special education is where it's at, So I went into special education and general education, and I fell in love with working with the autism population, kids with autism. And I did that for 10 years. And I did that for 10 years, and I loved it. And I'm sorry, there was some background noise.
No, you're okay. Don't worry.
There was some background noise, so I got a little bit distracted. But yeah, I did that for a while, and I've noticed, like, in my early 20s, I started switching to holistic health, like eating organically and fixing my health. And I started noticing connections between like what my students were going through and what they were putting in their bodies. You know, they
Mm,
were put, like, I had one student, I'll never forget him for this reason. He was severely autistic, but he was also very bright. So like when he wanted to act like a kindergarten student, he could, but when he wanted to sit down and do fourth grade math, he could do that too.
mm,
He was very like this or that, you know. His
mm,
mom would always give him Powerade every single day. And we noticed the correlation between drinking the Powerade and his behaviors.
mm.
Like, and it was the dyes in the Powerade, you know, one sip and it was like lighting a cannon in the middle of my classroom. And I said, you know, no one's teaching these kids about health, about nutrition, you know, it's not good. And then in the last few years, with what's happened in the school system, I ended up leaving the school system because their theory on health and what benefits the child is just completely backwards.
Oh yeah,
And
it's a joke. It's a joke and a half.
it's a joke and a half. It is. And it's just, well, they should, you know, if the student's having behavior, take data on it. Like that's their solution. That's not a long-term solution that actually works, you know?
Mm,
So with the American Dream Learning Center, I want to solve the problems, you know? I want to work on like, yes, ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, but also if your child's having behaviors, I want to be able to give you holistic advice to like put an end to it once and for all, you know?
mm. I love that. And I'm glad you mentioned the dyes because also being a cancer survivor, you have yellow dye, you have blue dye, you have red dye. They are toxic to the body and they are chemicals and they actually do cause cancer. There's a ton of research on it. So, and not to mention it affects your mental health and your brain chemistry, your nervous system. So I'm not surprised that when kids have this, like, you know, fruit roll-ups or cereal or Powerade and Gatorade, like there are so many chemicals in these like these standard American diet foods. I can't even call them foods because I
They're not
really just
food.
don't,
It's not food.
it's not food.
Not food.
It's not food. So I'm really glad that you're taking the initiative and also working with a population that, you know, I have cousins that are autistic as well. And it's really challenging to get them to eat differently.
Mhm.
And, you know, it's like the chicken nuggets and the Coca-Cola, and they like don't want
Addicting.
anything else. It's very addictive. And, you know, that plays a role on how they act and how they behave as well.
It really, really does. Like you said, it's not food. And actually, crazy enough, so I follow a lot of like great parent organizations. And
Mm,
one great parent organization is Moms Across America. And
mm.
they're very into like investigating all of these environmental factors. And they actually, like, I wish I thought of this years ago. They took the school food and they took it out of the school and they had it tested. I was like, why didn't I think of that? That's so great. It was full of heavy metals, full of pesticides. And think of like, you know, the health recommendations of the last couple of years. It's kind of funny because like, as I've heard even on listening to your podcast, I've heard this mentioned, where is your immune system?
Yeah. What's going on with
In
it?
in your gut. Your immune system's in your gut. And it's like,
Yep.
well, the school system's like, well, you have to follow these health procedures and you have to cover your face, and you're giving the kids heavy metal foods with pesticides in it, and the immune system's in the gut. So that little like procedure and all those like recommendations in the last couple of years aren't really doing much good, you
No,
know,
they're
like.
not. And people are more sick than ever.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's because like not everyone knows that like your immune system is in your gut. Like your gut health is like so incredibly crucial for your overall health. It's a picture overall health in general. It's so, so, so important, you know.
It's 2/3 of your immune system.
If everyone knew how important it was, and like how eating like your standard American diet just ruined it, you know.
It's interesting because, and I'm glad, you know, people like you are stepping it up because and this just like put me into perspective, you know, when I started my business and when I started this podcast and when I started teaching these styles of classes, more like holistic meditation, wellness, I would ask, you know, my clients and students like, hey, like, have you ever learned this before? And their answer almost 90% of the time is no. And
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa, you never learned this? Like, because I grew up with this. So, the fact that people aren't learning this stuff is highly concerning. However, more and more people, and it's obviously safe to talk about this in today's time.
Yeah.
So, I'm glad that you are. So how do you structure it? Like, what is like a day look like for you? Are you tutoring? Like, how do you do it?
Yeah, for now I'm tutoring. I mean, I try to have a balance. So I have my hat in a lot of different aspects of
Right.
like my overall dream. And I am tutoring. I do have tutoring clients. I'm currently taking clients. If anyone's interested in homeschooling help or tutoring help, I'm currently taking clients. I do try to make content for the Adventures of Ms.A because the Adventures of Ms.A is my Instagram and my YouTube page.
Mm,
And it came about in the middle of the pandemic because my students, again, were teenage years, 13, 14, 15, but severely autistic. And like when everything shut down, everything was crazy. They were up till 2 in the morning watching YouTube. And their parents would be up at 8 in the morning emailing me. I'm like, oh, where are they? Can they do a Google Meet? Can I see them? How can I support you? Because unfortunately, that population, especially during the pandemic, was more like, how can I support you as opposed to you have to do this assignment, it
right.
was
Right.
what can I do to support you?
Yeah.
And the moms would email me at 8 a.m. My kid was up till all night, 2 in the morning, they're sleeping, they can't see you. So I'm like, all right, I have this problem where my students are up at 2 a.m. and I'm sleeping at 2 a.m. How do I reach them at 2 a.m.? So I put myself on YouTube. I thought of the
Smart.
Adventures of Ms.A, and I'm like, all right, they're gonna watch me on YouTube at 2 in the morning, and mom could tell me, oh, they watched the video or whatever. So that
So
was how
smart.
so that's how that was born. And then in the recent years, with all the craziness in the school system and the very inefficient, health guidance in the school
Yep.
system, I started making a lot of content, like kind of like, poking, like taking some jabs at that nonsense and how it doesn't solve nothing of what they're doing is solving the problem. So then it
Mm,
kind of expanded from there. Like, I wanted to make a more official business for my tutoring business. I'm taking currently health restoration classes. So my long-term goals for my business, yes, I want to help with 1, 2, 3 IBCs and 1, 2, 3s, but also like if your kid's actively having health issues and like you want some behavior guidance, because the behavior protocol too for a student having behavior issues is very weak. It's
mm,
take data, use a reinforcer, and see what happens. But if you
mm.
think about it, if they're actively like poisoning their nervous system with dyes and stuff like that,
And heavy
most people
metals. Mm-hmm.
and heavy metals, there's no data, there's no behaviors reinforcement. Like even if they have something they love, because the whole idea of behavior therapy is, oh, you want time with the iPad, you have to do this to get time with the iPad, or whatever thing they love, a toy, like a piece of candy. A lot of people do edible reinforcers. I never like them because it's like it's giving them more junk to their nervous system. I rather do like a tangible one. But even
Mm.
so, if your system is actively being unfortunately poisoned, by like junk food and your nervous system, and that's the underlying foundation with autism is their nervous system is in overdrive, and
Yep.
it's calming down that nervous system somehow. I do believe too that even like what you do, like sound bowls and stuff like that, it would be amazing for that population. Like
Absolutely.
they need like that grounding, that grounding presence, like throwing work in their face and going, go, come on, And another crazy thing that the school system has been doing, I noticed a distinct kind of change in the last 10 years. When I first started, it was for that population, if they need sensory therapy, you can do sensory therapy with them. You have to do this little assessment, but it's no big deal. It's a worksheet. And it's kind of went from that to, it's not, they kind of say that, oh, the reason why they're not succeeding and they're not doing well is not because of their condition, it's because they're disadvantaged or some kind of reason like that. Oh, they're not exposed, they're disadvantaged, they're not exposed to the general ed curriculum. And they're trying to bring general ed curriculum into the special ed facility. And it's like, if you have a kid that can barely write their name and is actively having health issues, you want them doing some of this curriculum is crazy. They take topics like algebra and all these concepts, like very complicated topics, and they throw pictures on it and they say it's okay, try to teach them that it has pictures.
Yeah,
And
it's really like not catering to, it's like taking something and tweaking it a little bit, but like you're not actually catering to those people that need it.
Yes.
It doesn't, truthfully, the school system makes no
No
sense.
sense.
No sense to me. The hospital system makes no sense to me.
Right there with you.
And yeah, I mean, this is why we do what we do. And I'm really glad that you're working with people who need you, because I
Yes.
mean, who else is doing it? Honestly.
Exactly. Exactly. That's how I feel. I feel that, the priorities are all wrong. Like, who cares about curriculum? Like, honestly, who cares about curriculum and general ed curriculum and all these, like, and also, like, I was just so funny. I just got off another Zoom where it was a group of friends, and we were just talking. Like, one, she said you should also do like financial literacy, because like, who is teaching that to our kids? Like, all the important life stuff, like how to eat right, how to cook, how to have financial literacy. No one's teaching that. It's just, like Pythagorean theorem, like you were saying, like
Yeah.
it's like, well, we don't need Pythagorean theorem in real life, really, unless you're like an architect, or you know what I mean, something like that. But it's just, it's crazy. We have to go back to basics.
We
Back to
have to.
basics. And it's just, it's too much. Back to basics, back to daily life of how to eat right, how to take care of yourself. Even, the day we talked about this too, like the products you use, it makes a huge difference in your health, like what you're putting on your skin, everything, especially for a developing nervous system and developing child. All those little things matter.
I'm not sure if people just refuse to do the research, or they truly just are in another world and they like, I mean, I'm sorry, but like being lazy, and they don't want to, actually take the time to like learn about this stuff. And again, this is where we come in, but still, it's like, with your children, I mean, what are you exposing them to? Are you in an area, right? Like, are you in an area where your home was exposed to chemical, toxins, and, the soil is ruined? Were you, like, what's the protocol for your children when they're growing up? Like, what are they doing with the doctor? Are they on medication? Like, what baby powder, for example? Oh my gosh, baby powder literally causes cancer. It's
Yeah.
been around for God knows how long.
Wow.
Johnson and Johnson had a huge lawsuit against them, and guess what? They just paid it off like it was nothing.
Yeah. It's
And
sick.
people, I know a couple of women who have used baby powder their whole lives, and guess what they ended up getting? Some type of cancer.
That's crazy. And that,
Yep.
I think it's also just wait, it's kind of like it's almost a fear response, in that
Mm,
you don't want to believe that the products ready available to us are not safe. You don't want to believe that. I think
right.
that's a huge part of it. Like, how could that possibly be? Whenever I go to the store, if I buy something, it's safe. Like,
Right.
it's this social programming, and it's very
Yeah.
hard to break that social programming that, like, no, wait, like, you are what you eat and you are what you buy.
Yeah.
If you go that, like, if you eat McDonald's and you buy an over-the-counter product to wash yourself in, you're probably going to end up with cancer and stuff like
Right.
that,
And we're not saying that's the only thing. There are other variables, of
Oh, yeah,
course,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but
There's so
but
many
this
different
just
variables, but
this
it's
just
just,
adds.
it's like adding gasoline on a fire.
Exactly. Exactly. And if your emotional system is, you know, a wire, and
Mhm.
really just on that, in that fight or flight mode, and you are just in, you're holding on to trauma, you're holding on to these other things, and then you're adding all of these different products with chemicals in them, yeah, your body's going to break down. That's just how it goes. It's
Mhm.
very resilient, don't get me wrong. Our bodies are magical machines, I always
Oh,
say
yeah,
it.
absolutely.
But it truly makes a difference down the road. So what are you get like, and I, myself, my parents too, like, we always preach, like, it starts in the home. What is your environment like? What are you feeding your kids? What are you eating? Are you teaching them how to, express themselves in a safe way? What are you teaching them? That movement is medicine. What are you doing
Mhm.
with them? Because where else are they picking up these habits, right?
Exactly. And like, unfortunately, the schools are a huge portion. I mean, another angle of this too, which was crazy, and like they quickly, like, kind of like did away with it. But the new food pyramid, where they had like fruit on the
Don't get
top.
me, don't get me started. Don't get me started.
Yeah, right. Oh my God. And they quickly squashed that. Cause even like, I mean, at least that was kind of nice to see that everyone kind of realized like no one really went along with that. They were
Everyone
like,
was like, are
what?
you kidding?
Kidding?
Like, absolutely the biggest joke. I couldn't stop laughing. I'm like, people will believe this. That's the problem.
Yes.
And also, who are they marketing to in the
Yes.
grocery stores? Kids. They are marketing to your children.
Yes.
So if your kid sees Fruit Loops, and guess what? The eyes, even down to the graphic, the eyes look down because children are lower to the
Looking
ground,
back.
even down to the graphics. This is marketing 101, people. We just
Oh,
need you to wake
absolutely.
up.
Oh, absolutely. And then like, you know what? It's crazy. I was actually I mentioned this on a post, I forget which one, but another layer of this is like it's so crazy. It's like breaking through and showing people that like you have to switch up your everyday products. And then the next layer of it, once you like hit that point, I feel like it's the greenwashing too. The layer
Oh,
of
yeah.
greenwashing and oh, it's natural, but it's not really natural. And it's in a nice, pretty green bottle that says natural, so it must be natural, you know? So it's like even like once you hit that of oh hey, I have to buy alternative products, it's like wait a minute, I have to like sorry. Sorry about that. I
You're
have
okay.
I have to go the extra mile and like not only like I mean it was the funniest thing. I was laughing with my family because my dad says we get like 20 million packages a day in the mail, and I tell him because I don't buy your over the counter stuff. I always have my
No,
alternative brands that I like, and that's how I get my daily products. I don't go to the store. I really don't go to stores anymore. I
I
go to
know.
like the most like I go to my favorite product websites, I order, and that's it.
Yeah, same. Or I make my own because this
Or
is
make
where
your
I'm
own.
at.
Yeah, me
Make your
too.
own. This is where I'm at. I don't care. It doesn't even really, it doesn't take that much time.
It does.
And like growing your own food, like we have a garden. It just
Yeah.
it feels right. I don't know. I'm at this point where it's just like it takes time to make this lifestyle change over years sometimes, depending on where you're at.
Mhm.
But I always like to explain to people your taste buds change, your skin changes, your health changes, and you will see. I mean, I've actually talked to a bunch of women lately who have been talking about their hair
Yeah.
either falling out or thinning, and they're like, I don't know what's
Yeah.
going on. I'm like, what products are you using? What are you putting in your hair? Are
Yeah.
you putting a ton of products in your hair? And then lo and behold, I'm like, stop using that. You need to switch to something else.
Mhm.
But also like this is a thing, it seeps into your skin. So we have to be aware of that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'm actually like so glad you said that too about how our body changes, because that's I feel like a whole nother angle of this is that you know your body changes and what you're allergic to changes. That's one
Yep.
thing that's been like really reinforced in all my health restoration classes is that like I had this argument with like my best friend of 20 years. She was having breakouts and stuff like that, and she was having skin issues and stomach issues, and I said I think you need an allergy test. I think you're allergic to something. She goes, I'm not allergic to anything I'm eating. I never had an allergy. I'm like, your body changes.
Your
It
body changes every
changes.
year.
It changes every year. One minute you could be like eating food normally. Like that happened to me with nuts actually. I ate
Mhm.
peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for my whole youth. And then like at randomly at age 20, I became very allergic to hazelnut and nuts. I can't eat nuts anymore. So things change. And what happened with my best friend was that it must have been like a allergy to maybe a preservative or a
Mm.
sweetener in the bread she was eating because she stopped eating the bread and her acne cleared up. She texted me,
There
she's
we
like, my acne
go.
cleared up. I stopped eating the bread I was eating. I was like, you
Magic.
know, magic,
You don't
yeah.
have to go on a medication for it, and that's the problem. So let's just say if she went to a dermatologist, right?
Mhm.
And then she was like, "Ah, I'm breaking out. I don't know what's going on. Oh, here's some Accutane. Here's some
Yeah.
medication for it." And that just causes a whole slew of other symptoms and so many other problems. When really, in fact, it's just getting what is the root cause? There's always a root cause. It's going to take some time to figure out.
Oh, absolutely. And I feel like that's the biggest problem with the kids too, is that I really bet, especially like kids on the autism spectrum, I bet you that like they have a lot of not to say that there's one solution to this very, very, very complex problem, but there's certain
Right.
things that, can make it worse. I
Right.
feel like a lot of them have undiagnosed allergies and they're eating their food allergies. And another interesting aspect, going back to the that population, is that for the last like 5 years or so, it started 5 years ago and got very, very popular, eating gluten-free.
Mm,
Gluten-free everything, gluten-free everything. And is there merit in that? Like, yes, because we know what happens to the wheat in our food supply and all the pesticides they use on it and stuff. So there is like some logic to it. But at the same time, if you're eating a processed product with chemicals and like even if it says gluten-free, it's still not good for you and it's still adding to the issues.
yeah, the biggest key to do, and like again, this is propaganda, this is
Yeah.
marketing. It's like let's get on the bandwagon because
Yeah.
everyone has a gluten issue.
Yes.
And you know what? Actually, I was reading that a big source of the problem with all these gut, issues stems from glyphosate and
Yes.
pesticides that they spray on the crops.
Mhm.
And especially with corn, which is like 90% GMO in the United
Yeah.
States.
Yeah.
And there's glyphosate where the corn absorbs the glyphosate. And what do? They use corn instead. So now it's like, okay, you just have to read the label. If you can't pronounce it, put it down.
Yeah, that's like the most basic rule of thumb. If you can't pronounce it, put it down. Or shop like the outs. If you have to go to the supermarket, I love my farm deliveries. I get farm food
Yes.
delivered. I love my farm fresh food. And I just love my deliveries. But if you have
Yep.
to go to a grocery store, stick to the outer parts of it.
Aisles.
Stick to like aisles. Exactly. Yeah. The
Mm-hmm.
produce and like the meat department, like stay
Mm-hmm.
there and try to avoid the middle aisles because the middle aisles is where all the junk is.
Yeah, agreed. So now with the parents, right? So you're working with this population, and obviously there's only so much that you can do, especially because you're remote. So
Yeah.
with the parents, are they clearly they must be on board if they're working with you, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have a lot of tutoring clients, and for now we mostly focus on academic. They want academic. It all depends what all at the end of the day, it depends what the parents want and
Yeah.
like how they're willing to proceed. I have a lot of like I give behavior strategies here and there, and I give like I basically I want to promote myself as being like healthy as well and like into restorative health, but I try to give little suggestions here and there, and you have to just like gauge them to see if they'll accept it or not. And sometimes they do and sometimes you don't. And like it is what it is. You try your best to, that goes for I think any population, even we're sure your clients too. It's like they take what
Yep.
they take and it's just go on from there. It's like I feel it's so funny. I was just talking to I kind of had that battle with like my own personal family, like trying to get them on a healthier track. And, for a while it was like a lot of resistance. But now it's like, okay, maybe you're right about certain things. Let's try things. So it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Like you said, this is a long journey. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Absolutely. Um, so now where do you see your are you like legit like owning some type of school or something like a holistic school of some sort where you're like catering to these people because I
Oh yeah,
mean it's so needed.
definitely. Oh, definitely. That's definitely my long-term goal. I mean, I'm trying to build I admire you. I'm trying to model your business model of
Oh,
like
thank
trying.
you.
You're welcome. Like you do in person, you do remote. So for now, I totally agree with that lifestyle, and that totally works. So I'm definitely trying to like follow that lead and do my best, like in person and also remotely. But yeah, I had a conversation with a friend an hour ago. I would love to like my dream would be like to have like a storefront where I have like my business and you can come in like if you need help with like ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, I'm all for that. But if your kid's actively having behavior issues and you want to talk to me about behavior issues, oh wait, you froze a little bit. I'm sorry. Let me
That's
see.
okay.
You're still with me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Um, if you're actively having behavior issues and you want guidance like nutritionally and like ways to, basically take away that toxic load, switch to healthier products. I want like a whole shelves of like options for people to come in and be like, oh, hey, are you using like, that laundry detergent from the store that might be causing, skin issues. Let's try this laundry detergent, or like, let's try an essential oil. Or let's try this. So that's like my dream, like being able to like, yes, like, especially I was talking to a friend a little bit a while ago about, just the learning gaps too, the
Yeah,
pandemic caused very severe learning gaps,
I know.
and the school is not like addressing it because they have their curriculum calendar and they have to move on with their lives. Like, it's like, well, we have to finish this curriculum by the end of the month. And even if you don't get it and you're far behind, we got to move on, and that's not like pushing the kids along. So I like feeling
What blows my mind is like how long it's been since they've actually changed the learning curriculum in schools.
yes,
It's over 100 years.
Well, yes and no. So it's a very lucrative business, actually, the curriculums. Like they basically they design these curriculums and they like experiment with them, and the kids are kind of like the guinea pigs, and then they say, oh, the curriculum failed, we have to try another one and like scratch this one. And making new curriculums is actually kind of a money making scheme in the business, in the school business, because like they're constantly come like, it was like the perfect example, which is absolutely going to blow your mind. So when my parents went to school, it was algebra and trigonometry and geometry, right? The normal subject areas and math. Cool. When I went to school, they came out with this curriculum called Math A and Math B, where they tried to combine the different content areas into these subgroups, Math A and Math B. And I took the Math A and Math B regions. They make regions exams out of it. And then, that eventually got axed. And by the time my brother went to school, who was younger than me, it was back to algebra, trigonometry, and like, they do a lot of playing with the curriculums too, but the way it's set up is you have to here's your curriculum calendar. You have to teach it this content this day, this content this day, and you have to be done with this like unit by the end of the month. And if you're not, you're going to get in trouble with your administrator because you're not following the calendar. Meanwhile, the kids are struggling. They're really, really struggling. And like, I don't think I mentioned it to you. I just mentioned it to my previous call, but it was the craziest thing. One of my clients, the mom comes to me and says, she's struggling with algebra. Can you help her? I said, I know a little algebra. I can like tune in and help a little bit. It was substitution. And in substitution, you have to put the expression for the variable and sub it for that. And I was doing it with her and she was really, really struggling. And then I soon realized, like, let me try like just x plus 2 equals 10. She had no clue. She couldn't do x plus 2 equals 10, and she was doing advanced algebra. And I told her, honey, we have to go back to basics and we have to like start from this piece and we have to build our way up to substitution. And like, she was a little frustrated in the beginning, but like she eventually, by the end of it, she saw, oh my goodness, like you took me from step 1 to step 20. And I see how we got from, this step 1 of x plus 2 equals 10 to substitution. And
right.
that's the learning gaps that have to be filled in. Like she was just sitting in class, the teacher was sticking to his curriculum calendar, doing the substitution, doing what he was supposed to be doing, but she was completely lost. And like, had I not intervened, she would have like failed the test, because she couldn't do x plus 2 equals 10. She didn't have the confidence and like strength to do that. It's just, it's wild.
I can completely resonate with her because if anyone's read my book, I am terrible at math.
Yes.
With money, terrible at math.
Well, money's more important. It's okay.
Money is more important.
Managing your life. Yes. Managing your life is way more important.
This is the thing where it's like, okay, financial literacy, right? Like,
yes.
Why isn't that coming into play? So you have these things where it's kind of like, honestly, school sets you up to be a good employee.
Yes, it does. Yes. It really, really does.
About it. And I am glad that I learned that at a young age. And I also grew up in a family where I had entrepreneurs on both sides of my family. But in general, it's like, this is not working for me. Like, I love to work, but it's like, I love to do what I do, which is considered my work, but it doesn't seem like work kind of thing. So
yeah, that's the best way to be. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I am so thrilled that you came on. Thank you
Yeah,
so
thank you
much.
for having me.
Would you like to leave any words of wisdom for the listeners?
When it comes to children, I just came up with my model for my business, the American Dream Learning Center. It's holistic education for the whole child. Look at all angles. If your child is struggling in an area of learning, don't drill that one subject. Look for all of the whole factors that add up to that one problem, because it's not just that one thing. There's so many external factors. And if you need help, again, my Instagram is the Adventures of Ms.A. And my website is www.theamericandreamlearningcenter.com.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everyone, if you enjoyed this episode, share it with others, like, share, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.